Hello and welcome to Property Mama Adventures in Real Estate. So pleased you've been able to join me today. If we've not met yet, my name is Wendy Chamberlain and I am a buyer's advocate, a buyer's agent here in Melbourne, Australia. And I have been buying and selling real estate for 28 years, and my Property Mama is the adventures that I have had over that time that I love to share with you. And it can be quite entertaining, shall we say. So if you've tuned into some of my previous episodes, you would be aware that we're going through some shenanigans with a property that we purchased for one of our first home buying clients. So let me just provide you with an update there. So the tenant that's in the property is refusing to leave. That was the update I gave you last time. So we have gone through the process that we need to go through, and we have gone to VCAT, which is the Victorian Civil Administration Tribunal. Anyway, it's where you go to resolve disputes. So the real estate agent has gone to VCAT and had it heard in front of the VCAT member, and the ruling has been made in favour of the real estate agent, i.e. the tenant. The renter has to get out of the property. They've already been given notice to vacate. They've ignored that. They've refused to go. The property had 4 people living in it. It was being sublet by a company who then rented it by the room to people that were on Centrelink, so they're on welfare. So there was 4 people living in the room, 2 men and a lady, a woman and her daughter. So the 2 men left, not a problem. However, the woman and her daughter have refused to leave. They've said, no, we're not going. You've been given notice to vacate, so under the law you are required to leave, but they've decided, no, we're not going. So we took the matter to VCAT, and on Friday, VCAT ruled in favour of the real estate agent, and yes, the tenant has to leave. They have until Tuesday to vacate the property. Tuesday, 5 o'clock. All good. Or so you would think. I spoke to the real estate agent on Tuesday and said, how are we tracking? Are we on track for the property to be vacant? Because we need to do a final inspection so we can settle the property. So the fact that tenant hasn't left has caused problems for both sides, both parties. So obviously for our client, who are a first home buyer, so they are renting somewhere and they are paying a weekly rent. We were supposed to settle a week ago. Was it 2 weeks ago now? Settlement date's well and truly passed, and we haven't been able to take possession of the property, and they're not able to move into the property and start living in their new home. So as you would expect, they said, well, what's going to be the compensation for us? We're paying a weekly rent. We expect that we get some compensation from the vendor, because the vendor's not been able to provide the property with vacant possession, which is what we put on the contract, i.e. we don't want to inherit these tenants because, I don't know, my spidey senses were telling me they were a problem, and guess what? So they agreed to that. So the vendor, the seller of the property, has to provide this home vacant possession. So they've gone through the process of what they've needed to do, which is to give the formal notifications to the tenants. As I said, 2 have moved out. This other lady and her daughter have decided they're not moving it. So when I spoke to the real estate agent on the Tuesday, how are we going? He said, well, and I think I spoke to him about 1 o'clock. He said, well, they'd gone round to the home in the morning and she's still there. On the day that she's required to no longer be in the house, she's still there. And he said, oh, she was all very nice and polite and lovely. And she is saying that she's relying or speaking to the rental people that had rented her the room by room property to find her another home. That's fine, but you've had quite a number of weeks to sort this out, because you know what's happening? If you are not out of the property by 5 p.m. on the Tuesday, the sheriff gets involved, and that's not a great situation for you, because what happens when the sheriff gets involved is they literally come to the house, they come into the house, they will change the locks, and anything that's in the house that belongs to you will be put out on the street. They'll put it all on the street, change the locks, you no longer live there, and you're homeless. So I don't understand. If it was me, I would have been taking all the steps to try and find another property to move to live in. because as of when the sheriff arrives, you're going to have an extraordinary amount of increased stress in your life, because it's all very well for you to refuse to leave a property, but once you're turfed out of the property, that's it. Where are you going to live? Because all your stuff's going to be on the street. You can't even organise then to get the moving van in or get friends or people to come and help you move, because everything is literally on the street. So that's the situation with that one. And so we ended up, the vendor agreed to move settlement. Well, they had to. We couldn't settle, and we refused to settle because we're not taking possession, because you're in breach of your contract. You agreed to offer this property and provide it vacant with nobody in it. Well, there's 2 people still in the property. So settlement got moved by 3 weeks, and our client is out of pocket, because for these additional 3 weeks, they're having to pay rent and keep staying where they're renting and pay that rent. So they said, well, we want you to pay the rent. And look, happily and generously, the vendor has agreed to that. So they've agreed to move the settlement out by 3 weeks. That was their suggestion, to try and clear this all out. And they have moved the settlement by 3 weeks, and they are agreeing to cover the weekly rent of our clients, which is wonderful. It absolutely is wonderful, and it's very generous of them to do that. So we really do appreciate that. So we are now a week and a half out from that new settlement date. So what we need to do when we do get vacant possession of the property is organise a final inspection to review the property, and then make sure everything is lined up for settlement. So stay tuned in the next episode as to how that goes with getting the person to leave the property and getting vacant possession. All right, there you go. There's the update. So today I wanted to talk about negotiating to purchase property, which is fundamental to buying real estate. Here in Melbourne, we have a lot of auctions. Melbourne is an auction town. I love auctions. Auctions are my office. And, if you actually listen to the auctioneers, they're quite funny. Nobody laughs. It's actually really, really interesting. I'll go off on a tangent now about auctions. I find auctions entertaining. I can understand why buyers are so nervous and get stressed about auctions, because you are standing there, you're looking to buy a property, and we're talking about hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. You're about to say, I'm going to buy that, and put your hand up. And certainly here in Melbourne, under auction terms, when you bid at auction, it is unconditional, all over Red Rover. That is, you're signing on the dotted line, because you've agreed to do that. And yes, it is why you get escorted once an auction is over. It's why you get escorted in, and they want you to sit down and sign the paperwork. Because I was talking to an agent one time, and he was saying that normal auction went ahead, people bidding, etc. This particular man was the winning bidder of the auction. So they went over and shook his hand, took him inside, sat him down to sign the paperwork. And he said, I can't do it. I can't do it. And he stood up and he walked out the door. And the agents are like, what do we do? That's entirely stuffed up their auction, because first of all, the person who said they're going to buy it, who's bid against other people to buy the property, clearly got cold feet, stood up and left. You can't really stop them. You can't stop them. So until you sign on the dotted line, you haven't purchased the property. That's why if you go to any auction, you notice there's bidding or so forth, and they will go over to that person and very politely and gently, like, come on, let's go in, let's go sign the paperwork. Because until they sit down and sign it, they've not bought the property. So it does happen. People go, oh, sorry, look, my bad, I've changed my mind. And they take off out of there. And you go, what? Because put yourself in the shoes of the vendor, the seller. They've just had the property on the market. They've done the whole campaign, had the auction, people bidding at the auction. Someone's won the auction, outbid other people, and then they won't sign. So the agent would have to go to the underbidder, if there was one, assuming it wasn't just one person, and say, look, funny story. Here's what's happened, and see if they actually still want to buy the property. Because what happens in people's minds when you're looking at real estate or making offers on properties or even bidding at auction on properties, oftentimes people get caught up in emotion. of auctions, and what you might have paid on the day of an auction in that given moment, with the clarity of hindsight and a bit of distance between the actual auction and the time when someone is talking to you, people change their minds. They absolutely do change their minds, and they go, look, I'm not prepared to offer that amount of money. So when they're bidding against somebody else, that's the other thing. So they're bidding against this person. This person has won the auction, gone in, refuses to sign, leaves, change his mind. They go to the underbidder, who know, because when an auction is going, if you've got 2, 3, 4 people, terrific. But people will drop off as their budgets get hit, or where they see the value, they don't want to pay more on the property. So where you've got two tussling it out, so this guy's won the auction and this was the underbidder, and that might be 5,000, 1,000, 500, whatever it might be. If that other guy wasn't there, this person could have bought it for here, because they're only competing against these people. So what can happen is that this person who now has the opportunity to buy the property can go, well, I don't see the value. You were going to sell it for this. He's gone. I don't see the value there, and they can drop their budget. It can cause all kinds of problems. And I saw that happen once at an auction that I went to. It was actually for a property we were looking to purchase for ourselves as a renovation project. It flew way over where I saw the value of the property for me, for my numbers, to do a renovation and flip it and so forth. So I wasn't interested in the property. But in talking to the agent, the person that had bid on the property or made an offer on the property then wasn't interested. And other people that were there that were interested, they changed their mind. And so you get stuck with a property where someone at auction had said it's worth a certain value, and then it doesn't go ahead for all various reasons. And then they go to the underbidder, and the underbidder's like, nah, I'm not interested. And often people will change their mind. We find that sometimes when you make an offer on a property, particularly working with clients, you may make an offer, we've done our due diligence, we've worked out where we feel the value of the property is. And if our offer gets knocked back, it's this psychological thing. People go, nah, move on. And so if it turns out that the other offer that they said they have, like an offer, sometimes there's no offer, shall we say, if they're playing funny buggers, and goodness me, imagine agents doing that, eh? And they come back to us and say, look, that offer fell through, or it didn't go ahead, or they failed on their finance, whatever the reasons are. Often our client has said, nah, because they've moved on, because mentally, because you get yourself, think about it, you get yourself all G'd up and excited, and you see yourself in that particular property, and then you miss out on it, and you go, okay, well, that's not my home, and I have to move on. And that's what happens. People decide with the clarity of time that that's not their property anymore. So it can be quite a tricky, intricate process for people when it comes to bidding at auction or comes to making offers. If they miss out, well, then oftentimes they aren't interested in the property. So we're talking about auctions, and auctions are quite fun. And yes, I get that it's stressful, and people find it's stressful and so forth. And I love to people watch. I have been to many, many auctions, and bidding for clients, bidding for myself, even just to go and, a bit of a spectator sport, because I find them fun. I find it fun to, as I said, people watch, and I can usually pick who in the crowd are going to be the people that are bidding just by their behaviour and how they're standing. And it's really curious to watch people. So when the auctioneer comes out onto the street and they do their preamble, and generally they'll talk about the area, the amenities of the area, and blah, blah, and then they'll switch and they'll talk about the particular home and talk about how wonderful the home is. And then they'll start calling for bids. And it's usually crickets, absolute crickets, because no one wants to get proceedings started. And they're all got the arms crossed, and they're looking at, and they're shuffling their feet, and they're looking anywhere but at the auctioneer, which is, I find it interesting to watch. And you can watch them as they bid, and I can pick when they've hit their budget. Absolutely, I can work out when they have hit their budget. And interestingly, some of them keep bidding. They keep bidding. We're at an auction for a client in the inner north of Melbourne, and there ended up being 4 bidders on the property. And now, The property was underquoted, and I will cover underquoting in a future episode because that's a whole basket of wonderful in itself. There are reasons for underquoting, why underquoting exists, why it is done, and why it will never be stamped out. Future episode. So the property was underquoted, and by a significant amount. They had quoted, I think they quoted 950 to 1,050,000 on this particular property. I had done my due diligence and research on what that type of home in that suburb / street / pocket location was selling for, and it was much more than that. So it's underquoted. They underquote. They just do. Anyway, you know what? If you're going to play the game, know the rules of the game. They underquote. Know why they do it and know how to work around it. Or come and work with me. So the bidding started, and like I said, they quoted 950 to 1,050,000, and there was a couple there, and he goes, I'll give you $1 million. So he started the bidding off. So I was standing on the road, and there was someone opposite from me that chimed in, jumped into the bidding, and they started bidding against each other. The $1 million guy, he dropped out pretty quickly because it started going up over that. And then when it got to a certain point, when I had established that the property was actually on the market, I started bidding. Now, on the market means that the property has reached the reserve and the vendor is prepared to let the property go and sell the property. So here's a little tip for you. Don't ask the auctioneer, is the property on the market? Because you get smart-ass auctioneers who'll say, it's been on the market for the last 4 weeks. Ha ha. Well, no. If it's been on the market for the last 4 weeks, when we made an offer to buy the property, you would have sold it to us. But you get some smart Alex that say this kind of stuff. So you are far better off asking if the auctioneer is in a position to sell the property. Not if it's on the market. Avoid all the shenanigans of auctioneers being funny. Like I say, they are funny. They do make funny jokes, but that's not one of the funny jokes. I don't think that is anyway. Are you in a position to sell the property? And then you'll get an indication, yes or no. Sometimes they'll say, there's all kind of things, because they've all got scripts that they practice and rehearse their scripts. So they might say, not quite yet, I'll let you know when it is, or just a moment, we're just checking, and one of the other people have been run inside to check with the vendor whether or not they're going to put it on the market at that point. So when you establish that it's on the market, that's when you know you're playing for keeps. And playing for keeps means that if you make a bid and yours is the top bid, you're going to be buying the property. So I was bidding against this other person who I was on the other side of the road, and it was that the bids were just going back and forth. That's fine. It got to a certain point, and I was in front bidding for my client, as in we were the top bidder. So the property was going to be purchased by us. And it's getting to what I call the pointy end. And what tends to happen during the pointy end of an auction is that the bids start to get smaller, or they start to slow. So when at the start of an auction, if I said the auctioneer starts his auction and says, doesn't matter where we start, it's where we finish that matters. Calling for a bid, any bid, get started. And you might get people that think they're smart or funny and do really lowball bids, and the auctioneer is prepared for you. What they'll do is they'll say, thank you very much for your bid. That's not where we're looking to start. And they'll put in a vendor bid. And what a vendor bid is a bid on behalf of the vendor, where the auctioneer is trying to get the price closer to the reserve. So the vendor's going to sell at the reserve. If they're not there yet, if they're much lower than under that, they'll start with a vendor bid, and they'll do as many vendor bids as they need to get closer to the reserve, because ultimately, if the property is passed in, they want to pass it in fairly close to the advertised price that they're now going to have to put on the property to sell it privately. So that's what vendor bidding will do. The vendor bidding purpose of it is to get you as a buyer closer to where the reserve is, and they'll put in as many as they need to. Now, generally they don't put too many. I saw one auction. He was a pretty poor auctioneer, I will say. He just kept bidding vendor bids against somebody bidding. Like, pass the property in and negotiate it privately. He just kept bidding vendor bids. It was ridiculous. Anyway, that's why they do vendor bids. So they'll do maybe some vendor bids, and when the property is closer to the where it's going to be on the market, so that's why we ask, are you in a position to sell the property? And they'll either consult or say we're nearly there, or yes, we are. Sometimes the property, if the bidding is quite animated and there's multiple people bidding, sometimes it can actually go past what the reserve or the figure that the vendor's prepared to take, and often keeps going, I can tell you. So that's why sometimes they don't always initially or immediately declare it on the market, because if they have got the flow of the auction, and they keep going with the flow of the auction. So I was bidding against this guy who was off to my right, and it started to slow, and the smaller amounts, that means that's an indication that things are getting to what I call the pointy end, is that we're getting to where people are running out of puff, running out of budget, and you've got probably a closer opportunity to be buying that particular property. And then on the other side of the auctioneer, this woman is standing there next to her partner, and she's like, and she bids, and then I bid again. She bids really quick, and I bid again. She bids really quick, and I thought, okay, fine. So there are various tactics that I use when I'm bidding at auction to slow things down. People often say to me, what's your strategy for bidding at auction? There's no single strategy. You have to read the play. You have to read the buyers. You have to read the auctioneer. You've got to, it's a fluid process. You've got to have the experience of having been and attended and bid at enough auctions to know how an auction is going, because no two auctions are ever the same. They always play out differently. Some are fast, some are slow, some get passed in, some take off like an absolute rocket. So you need to understand the process of an auction. You need to understand the real estate agency and the auctioneer that's conducting the auction to understand how they run their auctions, because they all run the auctions slightly differently as well. So this is where our experience as your buyer advocate, your buyer's agent comes in, because I've attended a lot of auctions and I've bid at a lot of auctions, and no two auctions are the same. So I'm bidding against this woman who's on the other side of the auctioneer, and so I'm just standing, I'm smiling at her as I bid. Now, happily in this particular scenario with this auction, I had a good budget. I had enough budget based on our research of where we felt the property sat on price, what we thought it was worth, that I still had a bit of kitty in my tank. I still had a bit of money that I had been given as a budget from my client to be able to buy this property for them. And she's bidding like the fast against me, and I'm just doing my thing, slowing it down, how I do my auctions. Anyway, and I've done a bid, and it's getting really to the pointy end because she's starting to slow down, and she's, someone's hit their budget or close to their budget when they start having conversations. And generally, if they're standing there in a couple, there's going to be one of the couple that looks super nervous, really agitated. You'll have one who seems to be standing there, and he or she's the one bidding and taking control of things, but you'll have the other person there giving the game away, really. So it's very interesting. That's why I love going to auctions and watching people watching. Anyway, so I'm bidding against this person, and I bid, and then she bid, and her partner poked her in the hip. I went, I've got you, because you've just hit your budget. You've just hit your limit. So if you're going to go and bid at auction, it's like playing poker. Don't give away your cards. Don't make it super obvious that you've gone and hit your budget. You're actually over your budget, and your partner is going, stop bidding, because that's what he did to her. I went, okay, good. So I just did one more bid, and they stopped, and we won the property. And as I said, they quoted $950,000 to $1,050,000. We bought it for $1,292,000. And you saw in my little scenario I just told you, we had competitive bidding across a lot of that. So that property was underquoted. I knew it was underquoted. I had communicated to my clients that it was underquoted. They knew it was. So that is just what happens. If you want to play the game, know the rules of the game. And real estate is a game. It's a lot of money that you are investing to purchase your property. So you need to know how it works. If you are not confident in how it works, if you've not purchased a property before, or you haven't purchased a property for quite some time, make sure that you get some help from someone who is an expert in the industry that can support you, particularly in scenarios when it comes to bidding at auction, but also in negotiating. So one of our clients that came to us after they had been part of a negotiation where they ended up missing out on the property because she got annoyed with the process of negotiating. And she was absolutely in love with this property, and they had the budget to buy the property. But you got to understand the role of the real estate agent. We've talked about the auctioneer. The auctioneer's role is to get as much money out of you for their client, which is not you. Their client is the vendor, the one selling the property, who they're working for. So they will squeeze every last dollar and cent out of you so that they get the result that they need for their client, who is the vendor. So with negotiating, it's no different. You're dealing with the real estate agents, and it is the real estate agent's job. It's why they're being employed by the seller, by the vendor, to get as much money out of you for their client. And it's not you. And I say this to my clients all the time. Even people that I'm speaking to that are having trouble in the real estate industry or finding a property or negotiating or whatever it might be, as nice as the agent might be, because there are some lovely real estate agents out there. Look, they're lovely people. People are nice. However, you're not their client. They're not working for you. They are working for their client, and their client is the seller or the vendor. The person selling the property is the one that has appointed the real estate agent. So as nice as they may be to you, they may be lovely and polite and all the things, but it's their job to get as much money out of you as they can. You must always remember that. And that's why, as buyer advocates, buyer's agents, that's why we're employed by people. So our client who came to us who had missed out on this particular property. Now, two very busy professionals, and they have two young children. And one of the children was at the time 9 months old. So very, very young. And they had gone and had a look at this particular property, and the wife had fallen in love with the property, and they entered into a negotiation to buy the property with the real estate agent. There were also other people, other buyers that were also involved with the property and wanted to buy the property. So the real estate agent is saying to them, we've got other buyers interested, you're going to have to put your best offer in. And from a negotiation perspective, so my client, now client, but at the time they weren't my client, they're having to take the real estate agent on face value as to whether or not there actually is another buyer there. And I can tell you from experience that there often is not another buyer there. They're telling you that there's someone else because their job is to get the most money out of you. And so they weren't sure and couldn't ascertain whether or not there actually was anybody else there involved to buy the property. So they didn't believe the real estate agent. And this is a problem with our industry, is that there are great real estate agents. There are amazing real estate agents, and I love working with the great real estate agents. However, there are enough bad apples in the barrel that have ruined it for the agents that do the right thing, do a great job, and are wonderful to deal with. And so you get these people that don't tell the truth. And so a buyer doesn't know whether the real estate agent is telling the truth. And that was the case here for my future client. So they had put in an offer on this particular property. Now, she was in love with the property. And in my opinion, I don't think the agent did the right thing. The agent told her, you've bought the property, you've got the property. And so they got all excited and everything. And then what is common practice in real estate is that when you've made an offer, and it's an offer that's acceptable by the vendor, i.e. they're willing to sell their property at that price, The real estate agents will often go back to the other buyers that have inquired on the property and let them know that there has been an offer that's come in. It is acceptable to the vendor, and the vendor is going to sell the property if there's not another offer that beats it. They don't always explain this process to you as a buyer, and it was not explained to my future client that there was going to be basically a ring around, and the property was still going to be offered to other people, and that whilst the agent had said to her, it's yours, you've purchased the property, that's not the case, because he did the ring around and someone else came in and made another offer, and the offer was better. And so the agent then rings back my future client, who became a client. We found them something off market, by the way. So they were super stoked. But anyway, back to the story. Went back to my future client and said, well, we've had somebody come in, they've offered more money. And she's like, well, what do you mean? You told me that we had purchased the property. He goes, oh, well, no, we did the ring around. There was somebody else. And so the agent has done the wrong thing, probably in his languaging, and it's been misunderstood by somebody that doesn't buy real estate very often, because it was they hadn't purchased a property for quite a while. So she got pissed off, as you can imagine. She got really pissed off, because here she is with a 9-month-old and another young one, busy professionals. They don't have the time to go and hunt for real estate. They'd finally found a property that they loved, and they had been told by the agent, the property's yours, you've bought the property. But then, oh, sorry, next call is, no, sorry, by the way, there's another offers come in, and if you want to buy the property, you've got to give us more money. Well, first of all, does she believe the real estate agent? No. Second of all, is there actually a person there? Maybe. Well, as it turned out, there was. And so, and this was all happening. She said it was happening, and the back and forth was happening 6 and 7 o'clock at night. Now, you got young children. The young children are getting ready for their dinner, bed and bath, teeth, all the things. And she just didn't have the bandwidth to be handling this. And because the agent hadn't done the right thing and communicated the process properly, or she'd misunderstood, whatever it was, she got pissed off. And she made a counter offer, and then this other person came in and made another offer. And because by the time there's been going back and forth for a number of hours on that particular day, she got annoyed with the real estate agent, because she was up to her armpits in sorting out the children for the night. And she said, just sell it to them. They want it, just sell it. She wanted the property, and they would have paid more for the property. But because she didn't understand the process of real estate, and she got really annoyed with the real estate agent, she got pissed off and said, nah, just sell it. And then really, really regretted it. She really regretted it. She kept talking about this particular property. So after that, we, through mutual connection, she got introduced to us and came on board as a client, and she told me that story. And she actually took me to the property, because it was around the corner. We went and had a look at a property. It was off market, and it was around the corner from where that one was, which was a house that she'd fallen in love with, and went down and had a look at this property, and she was telling me all about this property. So because she didn't understand the process of real estate, she missed out on her dream home at the time. So you need to understand how to negotiate. You need to understand what is involved. And I talk about this all the time. The due diligence steps that are required to buy real estate. There are many, many steps. So number one is understanding all the steps of due diligence that you need to take to do to buy real estate. That's number one. Number two is knowing the order to put them in, because there is a certain order they have to be in. You can't put them out of order, because that's not going to work, right? You can't make an offer, sign a contract without putting a clause in after the fact that would have been instrumental in your offer. It doesn't work that way. You've signed a contract. You need to know the steps. You need to know the orders of the steps. So that's what we do. We support you through that process. So as I said, we ended up finding something that was off market, which means it's not advertised to the general public. Did you know that at least 40%, 40 to 50% of the real estate for sale in any market is not advertised? Did you know that? Now you do. And we buy that real estate. And how do we buy that real estate? It's through our connections, our relationships with real estate agents. We bought a property for a client, actually went to the final inspection today to have a look at it, and it's settling on Friday, and it was going to auction. I have known this agent for over 10 years. And so when I inquired with the agent about this particular property, we organised for our client to have a look at it. And I asked, can we buy it before the auction? And he said, he goes, you know me, if you want to buy it, I'll sell it to you, because of our relationship that we have. And we made our offer, went back and forth a little bit to agree on a figure that everybody was happy to pay for this particular property. And he had said through that negotiation back and forth, it was over about 24 hours or so, he had said their normal process is, again, do the ring around. Once the property, once the vendor has accepted an offer at whatever value, whatever level, and they're prepared to sell their property, agents do the ring around to contact the other buyers that have inspected the property. Like, as a buyer, you'd appreciate that, wouldn't you? That if you were looking at a property and someone else has made an offer, you want the opportunity to also get involved. That's what they normally do. And so after we'd gone back and forth a few times on the price, and we'd agreed and the vendor had agreed on the price, I said to the agent, okay, so you're now going to do the ring around? And he said, no, I'm just going to sell it to you. And that's because of our relationship that we have over many years established in the industry. And that happens all the time. It's through our relationships with the real estate agents that we have those connections, that they understand that we know what we're doing. We're working with genuine buyers. They're ready to buy. We can get deals together with all of our due diligence steps done. We get the deals together where they're there to be done. We get them done quickly. And so there's no mucking around. But as I said, we make sure dot the I's and cross the T's. We make sure all of that happens, but it's how we buy real estate. So if that's you, if you're looking to buy a property at the moment, or you're looking to sell a property at the moment, and you're not confident, or you don't trust real estate agents, or you're nervous, or you're stressed, or you have no time, you might be a time poor, busy person, and whatever you might do, that you do need that support, because that's what we're here for. We step in and we support you when it comes to buying or selling your property. So there you go. I was going to talk about negotiating. I didn't quite get there. There's another story I want to share with you about, it was a 5-day negotiation. So would you hang in there for 5 days? Because obviously my future client, who became my client, wasn't prepared to hang in there, and she missed out on a property because of it. That's real estate. You have to be patient. You have to hold your nerve, keep your cool. On this 5-day negotiation, the agent absolutely lost it. He lost it, and it was quite fun. I didn't lose it. He lost it. But we'll talk about that in another future episode of Property Mama. So feel free to get in touch on all of the socials if you've got any questions. If you've got any topics in relation to real estate that you'd love me to cover, I'd love to speak about those as well. If you need a hand, obviously Chamberlain, propertyadvocates.com.au, or if you get the opportunity, have a look at getstartedinproperty.com.au, which is my self-paced, hold your hand, step-by-step mentoring program. So if you have the time to educate yourself in those spare pockets of time, I have a program where I have downloaded my 28 years of real estate to pop it together in a course. We've got 38 modules at the moment, and you just follow the bouncing ball and you can get yourself confident to buy property. So getstartedinproperty.com.au for that one, or as I said, chamberlainadvocates.com.au. Look forward to joining you again on a future episode of Property Mama Adventures in Real Estate. Always fun. I'm having fun. Love real estate. We'll chat again soon. Bye-bye.